Welcome back, everybody. Very excited about today. We have Sandra Lloyd, an old colleague of mine, and we have had the privilege of working together, and I saw her work firsthand. And Sandra is the first HR professional that we've got on the Mining Coach podcast, and I'm super excited about what we're going to learn from her today. And she is a remarkable woman in mining. She has done some incredible work. I was exposed to, and we'll talk about that later in the podcast, exposed to some of her work. But yes, she's an HR, she started out as an HR professional. She's going to introduce herself just now, but she's also got a master's in leadership and performance and change. And she's working as part of another collaboration research team. I know she's busy with a PhD as well, and she's quite excited about all of that. And she's probably going to share some of that in this podcast today. But Sandra, good morning. How are you this morning?
I'm well, thank you for having me on the chat this morning, Christo. It's I've had my coffee in, so it's a good morning. I'm well, thank you.
And thank you for doing this. Really appreciate your time, and thank you for being vulnerable today and sharing your story. So I've done a bit of an introduction, but I think it's important that you just share, who's this woman in mining? Where is she at in her career at this stage? And what has been happening with the last couple of years in your life? But yeah, tell us about yourself, please.
Thanks. I think it's a cliche. People say they don't like talking about themselves, but here goes. I think for myself, it's been quite a journey on two different levels. I think coming from a background, and we can't negate where we come from, and I think that is probably where we will go in this journey, is everybody comes from somewhere, and Sandra came from a background of we didn't have a lot of money, there was not a lot of opportunities to study, and I think I pretty much had to deal with a lot of what young people have to deal with today. And I understand the journey that they have to take. So my journey took me in very different directions. I started out in the security space, where I landed up in the police services because I had a passion for actually wanting to study law. And that was one way of actually getting there. But by divine intervention, I was starting out on my path in terms of human resources development, and we helped develop the first child protection unit courses as we see it in its format today.
Wow.
We also then...
I didn't know that.
Yes, there's a big passion, and I think we've all got a destiny, and being a Christ follower, I know that God takes us on a journey. Sometimes we don't understand it when we're younger.
Yeah.
And I had a great passion for children, and at that point in time, in the early days of SAPS, there was no child protection unit courses. I worked with an incredible team, Anna Capino, who at that time headed it up, and incredible specialists. And I think I started realizing the value of SMEs. And from there, it went on to, developing the first kits for rape crisis centers. And once again, the team was incredible. And I think the value of working with teams started sitting as a very young 22-year-old. I knew nothing, but I knew people that knew everything. And actually to just be the facilitator of that and being part of that process. Yeah. I think that the same happened. I progressed on to Sandbox, where I got involved once again. And I think, again, it's part of your path with community development. And we would empower communities with different skills to be able to work within Sandbox, and also to work on the poverty relief programs, which the Department of Public Works had just launched. Also a fantastic team. And that's where my path took a different turn into mining. Once again, the right person at the right time. They don't see you from the basis of you as the person or you as the gender. They see you as what you can do. And that is very important. And ended up in a very, very technical environment, a mining environment, and we will go down that journey a little bit later on.
Yeah.
As a person, I'm an individual that loves people. People is centered to my whole being. It's centered to the way I view the world. And I just really enjoy being able to make a difference in people's lives. My philosophy in life, wherever you work, I want to leave the place better than I found it.
Sure.
And that is essentially, in my essence, who I am. And no matter where I carry myself, it's never about self. It's always about being self-aware enough of the people that I'm dealing with, whether it's a child from a rural community that has got nothing, to whether it's a very, very executive manager, and being respectful and being able to leverage what we have within a company for the better of the company, but of individuals as well. So that's a nutshell of who I am. And I think it's led me up this road to actually take all of that. I always say to the youngsters that life is a journey, and you're never ever the same version of yourself. But whatever you're busy with at the moment is busy building you to one day when you, maybe in your latter years of your career, you will actually see they were all Lego blocks. And those little Lego blocks make a picture. And then you might find yourself later on actually specializing and using all of that knowledge. And I think that's what you're doing, Christo, is that you harnessing the knowledge of everybody to try and improve and leave the world a better place. And I think there's a lot of shows out there. There's a lot of talks on YouTube. But I think what's important is that whoever's the contributor, I've got a motto: you're going to touch just that one. That one will listen. And I think that's what you and I hold dear, and why we do what we do.
You know, I'm goosebumps all over. It doesn't happen often, and I'm sitting here, and I don't have a long sleeve shirt on today, and I'm goosebumps all over because I'm resonating with every ounce of every sound wave that you've just shared with us about your love for people and just making the world a better place. And it sounds like a cliche as well, but really, I saw that firsthand from you, and I can just tell our listeners and our viewers, this woman is real. She's authentic. There's no pretense here. There's no posing. There's no mask. It's real. And I got that first glimpse, Sandra, when you were busy with a cadet program in the mine technical services field, and you were taking young people from local communities in the Marikana area. And anybody that has been in mining in South Africa knows there's this horrible Marikana incident that happened, a very unfortunate mining incident. But in that area, you were doing some incredible work. And I was part of that journey, and it was an incredible time, and it was so much joy. Tell us about that a little bit. Where did this start, and what was this about, and why were you so passionate, and why did it go so well? But yeah, just share with us, give us context, because our listeners don't know this.
Okay, so at the time, I was the lead on technical training in Lonmin, under the very able leadership of Jurgens Visser, who at that time just joined Lonmin. He came in as the technical senior manager, and I was busy building different various pipelines within the technical services departments. And as the listeners will know, under those departments, you find the geologists and the rock engineers and the surveyors, and you find the samplers, you find the guys from mine ventilation. And when I looked at that basket that I had the responsibility to, there was a basket of employees, but there was a basket of women in mining. And then there was this basket of the social labor plan responsibilities that we had. And I looked at the pipeline that we had at that point for the, the current employees that we had. And just the career path of a rock engineer is up to 7 to 8 years. And the same for surveyors and the mining ventilation guys. And I realized, but there's something wrong here. I mean, we can get the people through that are currently in the system, but what next? And these are the people that carry the legal responsibilities over other people's lives. And then myself and Jurgens, he had this idea of taking people and creating a pipeline for people from the communities. And him and I were just chatting one day, and he said to me, Sandra, go and build a program. And I went back, and we went like any other thing. I think sometimes we get far too complicated, and we must try keep. We mustn't be so complicated in life. And I went and had a look at who would be my target population, and I like being given the most impossible situations. And I actually went and the first pilot, I actually went and recruited people, literally youngsters living in the shacks that had the most difficult circumstances. And that is the story across South Africa. So my first interview in the selection process was with a young man that was there in his school shoes without socks. And when he came on the program, the first pair of mine socks that you issue as part of PPE was his first set of socks that he had actually owned in the last, I think, 10 years of his life.
No way.
And that, for me, it just took it to the next level. And then it was the petrol in the tank of let's make a difference. And we taken youngsters from the local community town of Mooinooi, and we actually brought 2 different groupings together, keeping our eye away from what politics wants to play in terms of numbers, but to bring young people back, everybody of all racial groups, into one room. The beautiful lesson that was learned there is that we had extra mathematics classes, and I'm just sharing the story with you. And one of our, I don't like using labels, but one of our white students was actually battling with her mathematics, and one of the black students actually was helping them out. And after class, he'd come to me and he said to me, Sandra, I thought white people are clever. I'm actually helping them. And it's my first actual interaction with a different racial group. Wow. I've always lived in Majakaneng, and I've never actually had the opportunity to, and I'm actually okay.
Yes.
And
wow,
it was just another, it's another bubbling moment of, we want to integrate youth and we want to integrate people into a workplace, but we don't know one another really. And we have these misconceptions about one another, that I might think that you are more intelligent than me, when in actual fact you are more than enough. You are actually okay, but you didn't know it because you never actually ventured into a world beyond your township or your little town of Mooinooi. And so we built these programs, and we had an incredible success. I've actually been monitoring the initial pilot program. It's now 7-8 years on. And the majority of the people that were in that pilot program were absorbed into the mines. They are working currently still, and many of them are actually have gone abroad. Wow. Some are working for international mines in Australia and Canada. And it's not about myself or Jurgens that was doing the program. It was really about what is at the heart of what we want to do. And you can build any program, but if you don't build a program that you want to change just that one person, it mustn't be a tick box on a social labor plan. It mustn't be a budget that was allocated and you now need to spend that budget. It needs to be something that really, when you look back on your life, you can say, I changed at least one person's life. And that is, for me, that was the key motivator. And I think Jurgens and myself, we really achieved that. But we achieved it with a team in technical services that also broke a lot of preconceived ideas. I had a wonderful technical team from geology right through rock engineering, the full value chain of people that engaged the youngsters, that embraced them and gave them and allocated them the necessary coaching that they had to give to them, or the person that would coach them. And these managers all came together and they actually started going beyond the program. So, and the majority, if I might say, because I know we like using gender in mining, I think it's a sensitive issue at this stage, because I think we've made it sensitive. We've made it a thing. Is that a lot of my managers, I will send them an email and say, my students don't have towels. Can you perhaps help me out, or just spread the message? The next morning, I would have towels in front of my office door delivered from geology or from the technical services managers from Eastern Platts, Western Platts. The same would go for, it's winter time. The guys don't have any coats or anything warm. And for me, that is when you see the actual heart of a company. You see the heart of the people. And it's beyond just sending a graduate into your department and he's got a little logbook you have to tick. It becomes personal. And I think what's important in the whole mixture is that, once again, if you can go to the people and share the passion that you have and say, please help me, help us, help somebody else. And the message I always gave was, we must remember that your child is going to enter a workplace one day. How would you like that workplace to look for them? How would you like, if it was your child sitting in front of somebody else, how would you like them to engage them? Irrespective of what racial group or where our backgrounds are from, is that we always must return to the important part of why are we a community, why are we people, and how do we actually embrace people that are sitting in front of us each and every day. And I think that's what you're doing a lot, is embracing youngsters that need to acquire certain knowledge, that are hungry, that need advice. I think if we all go back, we always see ourselves, our younger selves. And if I look at the younger version of myself, I would say, and I said this to my kids, I call them my kids of my program,
yes,
is go and find yourself the most knowledgeable person in the workplace. Generally, they're the guys that are on the rock face drilling, or it could be the old miners. It could be the older surveyor that's now almost in the last home stretch, sitting in the office, or the grey-haired geologist. Go and find yourself that person and become so irritating that you offer them to carry their toolbox if you must. Do the work for yourself and go and identify. Don't wait for somebody to come and give you a little mentorship book and say, now this is the recipe of mentorship. That is very nice, but there is still there's still those basic principles. And for me, basics will never go out of fashion. Never. And so the younger version, I would say, is keep on keeping on, irrespective of how many no's you get. I know a very good friend of mine that in COVID time, he made over 240 presentations. So he got 240 no's. But what he did do is he got up every day and he continued. And there's that poem of The Man in the Arena. It's never about the people in the crowd that says to you, can't do it. Or your friends, if you're sitting in a bar and you've got a dream, or you're sitting somewhere in the streets and you think this is my future, that I'm stuck here. You're not stuck there. You're not. It's about your journey. Nobody's going to do it for you. And it's about picking yourself up and doing it. And I think what was beautiful about the Mind Technical Services program was to actually take people from rural communities and actually understanding what is your dream. And their dream is different from a person that comes from a community or society that has it all. You wake up in the morning, you can go make yourself a nice cup of coffee, have a warm shower. And there was this one child's dream board that I will never, ever forget, ever in my life. And his dream was, and he wrote down, I want rain from the roof. Wow. And I didn't understand this. And so I got somebody to interpret for me, what do you mean? And actually he was referring to, I just want to have a shower in my house, rain from the roof.
Oh, wow. I didn't get that either.
And, it just struck, it just is almost like calibration points in life.
Yeah.
That we often see life through our worldview. And we need to go and see life through the lenses of people. And that took me, I think it went into my life toolkit when I was working for De Beers in Kroonstad. We were busy with the mine closure. And in that particular mine closure, you have to look at how do you impart skills that people can continue after the mines have left. And it's almost at this moment that I had that bubbling moment, is that we try, as from a mind perspective, we try and empower communities. We try and make sure everybody has jobs. But the reality is that mines cannot take that responsibility. We only have an X amount of jobs in the basket, but we have a huge amount of communities next to the mines. And when I started looking at the social labor plan and the closure kits that we have, I started realizing that, are we as an industry, is it not time for us to actually start changing and challenging the metrics? Is what we're measuring for our social licenses, all the bursaries, all the community activities, is it truly sustainable? Is it really sustainable? And why do we drive through areas where mines have left and everybody's gone back to poverty? And that is something that is really, it goes beyond mining. If you go to any major townships, you will find heaps and heaps of rubbish. You will find people sitting on the roads, and I don't see them as just part of a crowd that I drive past. I just think to myself, how must it feel to actually be living in such a community? But can you imagine you're a mother and a father in that community? You community leaders, and you think that this story is going to be the story of your great-grandchildren. And how can we start collectively? We've got, once again, so many knowledgeable people out there. We've done a lot of work. There's a rich amount of data around all the social labor plan projects that's been done. I think personally, there's a lot of good work that mines have done. Those stories have never ever made the media. And those stories is something that we need to capture and learn from. We only read about the stories in the Mining Weekly, which is a mining magazine, or the odd one that hits the newspaper, or maybe at a conference. But the greater community out there, the greater audience, they don't know what good work the mines have actually done. Mm. And I think we often need to focus on that. But that said, there's a lot of case studies that we can draw from the mines. But equally, we're sitting with a lot of NGOs that have done incredibly good work. But we need to break the silo down between the case studies and say, how can I learn from what you've done? And how can I learn of what we've done in mining? And let's try and go and design a new metrics. Let's go and try and go and look at how we can do things differently. There's an incredible project out and the listeners can actually go and have a look in Philippi village, where the CEO of that particular area, Bushra Razak, she is doing incredible work. And it's right next to one of the most violent, gang-ridden areas where there is massive social problems. People are really having a hard time just surviving on a day-to-day basis. And she started something there that is a lighthouse. But it's also an incredible story that we can pull into different stories across not just the mining industry, but we need to be once again centered to why are we doing things? Mm-hmm. Are we doing it for a tick box, or are we doing it really to change just one person, to give them rain in their house, their rain in their roof or their shower? Are we helping them to help the next generation? Mm. That's probably, Christo, for me, the key question is, what are we doing to set up the next generation for success? Not just on a corporate level, but collectively. What are we doing? Mm. What would you like your child? How would you like the workplace of tomorrow look like? Mm-hmm. If they phone you one day and you're retired and say, hey, Dad, I've come across this manager and he's unkind to me and he's bullying the hell out of me and I can't survive here and I can't breathe. How do I cope with that? It's the kind of questions we should ask ourselves. Is that how are you treating somebody else's child or sister, brother? Mm-hmm. And this brought me probably, I think, full circle in the sense that looking at my very first experience in the police, harnessing incredible knowledge of people that are incredible law enforcement leaders, officers, that lesson stuck with me about let us pull together the people that know. Mm-hmm. Let's bring them together and let's do more dialogue on this. So for me, it also started amounting to, one day I was driving down in a retirement village and I saw all of these houses and I thought to myself, how many of these people are now in their late 70s and the age group between 80 and 90 and 90 and 100. And I thought to myself, there's so much knowledge here. there's so many people in the rural areas. I had the fortunate opportunity to be in Australia, the Aborigine communities, where there's this indigenous knowledge that if you had to go to an 80-year-old and a 90-year-old now and ask them, what do you think we're doing wrong and right?
Mm.
How do you think we fix this? Because once again, they were the authors of basics. They created the basics in life.
Mm.
And leaving there, I realized, but in Australia, in terms of the indigenous communities, there is just an engagement that needs to take place there before those generations are gone. And that sort of like solidified itself. I went home and I actually asked myself, but how many of my family members, your grandfather, grandmother, parents, if you had to take out a photo album and you actually find a picture there one day, do you know who they are? Where do you come from? Do you even know who's on that photo? And it took me down this rabbit hole. And I started, and it's actually a passionate of mine is to build family trees. Is that if you don't know the stories of where you come from and what your generations before you went through, how can we not know what strength lies within us?
Mm.
We, as I said to you earlier on, I'm a Christ follower. We are the sum total of all the prayers of our grandparents and our parents. And in that sum total, they too lived through depression years where they didn't know how they're going to feed the kids.
Yeah.
I mean, I even realized they didn't even have fridges. And I had to go back into the history and ask them, so how did you guys how did you deal with meat in those days? And how did you deal with actually making soap? And how did that happen? And this is a story I'm telling you because there's a reason. Is that there is a lot of things that is not going right in our homes, in our families sometimes. But there's a knowledge that we can tap into. New parents, how did you do this? Teach me this. Give me some advice.
Yeah.
Go back to the indigenous communities and ask them. Go and ask those people that worked with and lived. What are we doing wrong? How do we actually get our youth back on track where we're losing it?
Mm.
How did you deal with it? And yes, we've got a lot of complexities now, but the basics remains the basics, and they made it. They survived. They made their soap. They made their meat, or they could keep their meat cool. And this is a long story around storytelling. And the role storytelling plays. And I used to put a lot of my senior managers in a venue with my kids, as I would refer them to. And they would see and hear the stories of how a senior manager actually got to where he got. Yeah. Because you see, the perception is that you were perhaps privileged and you got there on the basis of that. But actually, you were just a human being that took up a toolbox somewhere and irritated somebody. And you found yourself a mentor and you worked your way up and to do the hard work. You did it. And some people, yes, they did have privilege. But I think it's about asking and storytelling and learning. And that for me is probably the essence of where we need to return back to. And I always challenge people whenever I chat to them. I said, make it an April project or a December project when you have the family over. Pull out the albums or get the notebook if there's no photo. Ask where you come from. Ask who did what, how did they live, and go back to your inherent your own story of your family and go and try change that story. If it's not in a good place, change it. And if you're given a program to be on, study hard. If you're given an opportunity, just work day and night if you have to, but be the one that's counted. It's your job. It's your responsibility. It's your job to make your life a success, just like it was our heritage and our ancestors that came before us and the managers that came before us. There's a recipe. There's a recipe that it's the basics. There's a basic recipe in life that we need to keep on following.
Phenomenal. I'm making notes here.
I can see.
Sandra, you're so passionate about this community, and I love it because we haven't touched on this in any big way at all over the last year on this podcast. And it's so true that there are a lot of great stories out there about minds that are doing great things in your communities. It's also true that there's a lot of stories there that we don't tap into, where the local community will tell us, don't do this. This is not going to work. But we end up just doing it because we're ticking the box on a social and labor plan. And so it's so clear to me that that part of you has transformed into this community, call it activist, but passionate person to make a difference, for a better word or a better description. But I do want to ask you, you've got this history of HR and people development that was a large part of your career up to this point. And what would you say to an HR person? Look, an HR is like mining engineering. There are different areas of specialization in HR, as an example. And with HR being such an important piece in the puzzle of mining, what would you say to a younger HR person that's in HR development or people development part of the business that you've seen up to this point that is not going to plan about their actual job versus what they are doing? And how would you recommend they do things differently or shape things differently from your experience and what you've seen in human resource development?
Yeah, I think what I would say is push aside the old way of doing things. Be the HR that is actually a bit of a maverick, but not to the extent of being destructive, but to be a maverick to the extent where you're constructive. Bring in people from all different levels. If you have budgetary constraints, bring in people from internally, the older generations. I laughed the other day. I'm a very old generation. I work on Excel spreadsheets, and one of my colleagues said to me, "We're going back to the blast from the past sort of thing because everything has evolved." And I just said, "Yeah, we build mines and cities on Excel spreadsheets." And I think you need to engage those older people with the different generations in the workplace. As an HR practitioner, go and have a look at where your majority of your generations lie. Look at your profile. Is it millennials? Is it generation Y, X? Is it baby boomers? How many have you got left? Because that tells you a story. It tells you the story of what you should be doing differently, because if you're still doing what everybody else has been doing for the last 50 years in the company, we are on the way out, particular generations. You might find in your profile that you have you have a greater population of millennials or other generations that think differently. I love this generation that's currently out there. I think a lot of the listeners' children are in that space. They think so differently from us.
Yes.
They are so in touch with life, and they've learned from us. They've seen us working our butts off, going to an office at 6 a.m, coming back at 6 tonight. They've seen us slogging away, and yes, we did it so that they can have the lives they have today. But they've also learned from our lives that, I don't want to be like that.
Exactly.
I don't want to actually live like that. And these are the actual practitioners that are in the workplace today. Is that I always say, get those older people around the table, document the basics, make sure you get the recipe of how is it to be a good surveyor? What is the rituals around that? What is the ritual about being a good engineer? What is the meetings I must hold, and what is the safety file I must have, and what is the maintenance schedules that I must look at? And just the simple tasks that is basic, but it can lead to a major risk if you don't do that. Because every job or every profession in a mine or anywhere in any corporation has a set of rituals that is there that makes that particular profession live through the changes of time. You will find a rock engineering manager that was taught by 2 managers before, and he's doing exactly the same process. And the younger professionals need to engage. Where are we at? What is the new profile? Kids of today, and I call them kids of today because they probably always will be kids for us. They might not like it, but they are a generation of short snippets. They like to learn in short snippets. If you go and put people in front of a lot of online learning, you lose them in many ways. I've noticed that. And yet we rely very heavily on that, and we look at how do we, as HR practitioners, go with the change of time. What will make a learner actually learn better? And I mean, I've also learned over the past few years about learning on TikTok. I mean, it's literally a 45-second snippet, but compacted into that is just so much that it's a little business on its own now at the moment. You can sell anything. You can promise somebody that this product is going to make you live forever. And when you look again, all those products are sold off the shelf. That's the power of media.
Yeah.
And how do HR practitioners actually harness that? But the starting point in everything is to get your aging, retiring, job roles and professions, bring them in and have ongoing sessions with them. Document those recipes that work. Get advice. Ask. Look at what we're doing wrong. Have a look at in a conversation. You don't have to have workshops. Let's just talk. Let's get around a round table. It's like families. Let's sit around the table and eat together again. Where did we go wrong? No, we sit in front of the TV and eat, or we eat on the run. We lose that sense of community. We lose information along the way. Is it old-fashioned to sit and have dinner together? No, that's what the older generations used to do.
Yeah.
I laugh. I laugh because, in our days, you had to be home at 5 o'clock and bathed when your father got home. I mean, imagine telling this generation, but by 6 o'clock we were around the table eating, talking.
Mm.
And I'm not saying that that's what we must do, but it's definitely food for thought. So get those guys around the table. Have your round table. Get people from outside. Let them come in and add to that body of knowledge. Because you as the HR practitioner, you cannot use the same things that we did in the next 20 to 30 years of mining. And that probably brings me to where I'm at now in my studies, is that there's a great part of AI and technology. Minds are focusing on it, they're changing it. And you are empowering your employees internally. But can you imagine the divide that would happen between the Marikana community, the guys that are sitting somewhere there, and everybody's hoping to get a job on the mine? But the digital divide already inside an organization is so vast. Can you imagine how big the gap is going to become for the guys in townships and in any normal community next to a mine or next to a big city? How do you get people to actually gear themselves up to look beyond a mine for a job? How do I empower those communities to actually have programs where they can grow outside and beyond the focus of the fence of a mine, or what a municipality can do for me, or what somebody can do for me, and start creating an entrepreneurial spirit, but also bridging them with the necessary AI skills to actually be able to be marketable. So back in the day at Landman, it was about how do I bridge you with technical mining skills so that you can get a technical mining job. Now the question is, how do I empower a guy in a community next to the mine with automation and AI skills to be able to be employable anywhere? And how do I teach them to actually grow those skills so that I can create my own business? So this is the questions, and in part of the study is how do we create sustainable communities in a time when digital technology is taking off faster than what you and I can actually embrace. Excel, from Excel to Power BI tools. I mean, even we battle with that.
Yeah. Sandra, we'll have to get you back. We've been going for a good 3/4 of an hour, and we do honor our listeners, call it need for keeping it under an hour. I'm absolutely fascinated by the work that you are doing, and that's why you have to be back. Absolutely fascinated by how you've grown since we've actually last had real technical conversations about mining, and it's an absolute privilege to know you. And I'm going to closely watch the space. And I really want to thank you for, I guess we are wrapping up now. Like, I'm cutting you short here. No, I would like you to finish off with a final few words, and, what is it that you want to leave us with today?
Just be authentic. Be yourself in this world. Don't try to be somebody else. And run your own race.
There we go, everybody. Sandra, thank you so much for adding value today to the mining community, to a younger version of yourself. And for our listeners and our viewers out there, don't go away. We're going to wrap up with a summary at the end, like we do every week. Sandra, we wish you all the best, and we will ask you to come back and share with us what's the learnings, and share with us what's been happening, and how are you disrupting a sustainable future for a community and a mining community. Thank you very much, and you must keep well.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Thanks, Christo.
Welcome back, everybody. What a story. What a story from Sandra. I'm going to recap what I've learned. Number one, if you are operating within a community as a mind, get to know the story and the different stories of that community. If you're a young professional, understand the recipe of success of the people that you serve. If you're an HR professional, understand the age distribution and the diversity of the team of people that you serve. Then keep on adding to your body of knowledge. And finally, be authentic and be yourself. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Enjoy your mining. Cheers.